Hello everyone, my name is Chukudi Wazo and I'm here to share a tip on ESG and sustainability. So over time I've gotten burning questions from several individuals asking me how do I transition to this field, and it's understandable. The field is growing very fast, it's a new field. Most folks are already in HSC, they're already established in finance, they're already established in the legal services or every other function. So it becomes a challenge on how to migrate to this new field that is exciting, that has several jobs being advertised on LinkedIn. And one of the things I tell people is that it's very confusing because there are many things out there, many resources out there. You attend several webinars, and what you see in those webinars is people giving you bits and pieces of what they know. And of course, they share from their own journey. But the challenge is that they might be very advanced in their journey, which makes it difficult for you to understand what they are saying. Except you're on their level, then you can understand what they are saying. But if you are still in a level below what they are saying, you won't appreciate what they are saying. You might be hyped at first, but when you get back home, you get back to your usual confusion of where to start from. So my own solution to this is I've tried to do this video now, just based on a reflection, my own personal journey. And there's no textbook rule, but I'll just tell you how I got up to speed with things and learning. And I think it's something you can explore in your spare time. So I give you a brief scenario. So just to give you a summary, for those of you that don't know me, I started my career in consulting, environmental and social management consulting, and eventually moved on to, I did that for 6 years, then moved on to industry. And in industry, I was an environmental manager, for a big conglomerate, which is very diversified business interests in mining, energy, agribusiness, power, real estate, and transport, port operations, very big, and also refinery, fertilizer. And I basically help the company manage their E&S risk in line with requirements, whether regulatory requirements or requirements from lenders or investors, before moving on to become head of sustainability for a big food and agri conglomerate, where I help them develop the sustainability framework for their company. So, and eventually now I'm in finance. So I've done the full spectrum over 13 years, and across this journey I've learned a few reflections. So from my journey, I would say there are two blocks of knowledge or two approaches you should take in building capacity. You can take two of them at the same time, or you can do it one at a time, depending on where you have a passion for. And I'll explain. One block of it is what I call environmental and social risk management part. While the second block is if you're on the sustainability or the impact side, right? So these are two distinct areas that you need to understand very well. Now, on the first one, which is the environmental and social risk management, it is basically it's a system for managing environmental and social risk of a company, of a project, of a service, name it. It is just how a company, what system does the company have in place to managing it. And in exploring this system, the International Finance Corporation, IFC, have done a very good job in coming up with their performance standards, which basically defines 8 areas, the IFC performance standard 1 to 8, 8 areas of the risk items, though some of them are environment, some of them are social, some of them are a mix of both, which tells you, well, this is what we like to assess in terms of our risk assessment. So that is a good starting point. So if you were to build a capacity in this first block I've mentioned, the first thing you need to do is to learn the ISC performance standards. There's also a guidance note that explains the standards, so you can read both of them together. A second important component you need to understand is the IFC's handbook for environment and social management system, ESMS. So that handbook basically gives you the framework for how the best practice framework or good practice framework for how you should look at the environmental and social management system of a company. And why this is important is when investors come to your company, a factory, whether you are working for a private equity firm in the finance space or a commercial bank, or you are working for a venture capital firm, or you are working for a large manufacturing industry, or an agribusiness, or in IT, or in telecoms, or even in the educational sector in a school, one of the first things they try to assess is what is the ESMS of this company I'm looking at. And this IFC handbook explains what they expect in the ESMS structure. I'll quickly go through it. The first thing we look at, when you say system, the first thing that is contained in IFC Performance Handbook for systems is you have the policy. That's the first thing. What policies does that organization have? Second bit of it is you move on to assessment. How does this company assess their environmental and social risk? Now, when you go to the third one, you now have knowledge and capacity. That means what are the organograms they have in place? Who is responsible for managing environmental and social risk in that company? How does this flow from board to ESCO, executive management, to the various units of the company down, who have environmental and social risk responsibilities? And what kinds of training do you have in this third bucket? Now, the fourth one is what we call management programs. So for each risk that are identified, what are the management programs or action plans to take care of those risks? Now, when you finish from that, you now have so we've done policies, we've done risk assessment, we've done organizational capacity, we've done management programs. The fifth one is emergency preparedness and response. If you've managed risk and everything, how about abnormal situations when you cannot, uncontrolled situations? There's a fire, even after managing all your risk, there's the big spillage, there's a civil unrest. What is your system for managing this kind of abnormal or uncontrolled events? How are you prepared for them, and what are systems in place to take care of them when they do occur? Now we've done that as the sixth one. You now move on to the seventh one, which is around stakeholder engagement. So how do you engage stakeholders across in all these things you are doing, whether in the policy making, in risk assessments, in interacting with your people that are responsible for various duties, or even in your management action plans, your emergency response, you are interacting with internal and external stakeholders. How do you engage them? The next one is what we call external communications and grievance mechanism. So when you've done all these fantastic things, how do you communicate it to external stakeholders, right? Either your investors, your host communities, the regulators, any concerned party. And what is your grievance mechanism for getting in feedback from these external stakeholders? If these external stakeholders have issues with your company, how do they feed it back to the company? And last but not the least is your management review. What is your process for reviewing the effectiveness of this system? Now, the secret is that anytime any lender comes to assess your company for whether you are certified to take finance, they are basically checking your ESMS. So as somebody that wants to learn in this field, just to bring you back, I've mentioned that we have two things I want you to learn from. Either you want to focus yourself on learning the environmental and social risk management bit, or you want to focus yourself on learning the sustainability and impact bit. But I've been explaining the environmental and social risk management bit. And in this bit, I've explained that understanding IS performance standard is the first step, 1 to 8, to learning, together with guidance notes. A second document is the handbook for environmental and social management system. And I've given you the components of what that management system should look like. So as somebody that wants to acquire knowledge here, you have to look at it. And then a third document that you can look at to help your knowledge is IFC has specific good industry practice EHS guidelines for various industries. They have for fertilizer, for oil refinery, for vegetable refinery, for sugar manufacturing, for fertilizer manufacturing, for every. So what it means is that that's for reference purposes. So if you are assessing a sugar factory, it would be good if you're looking at it as a document you had in your toolkit, IFC performance standard 1 to 8. You have the IFC ESMS handbook. then you have the specific IFC EHS guideline for this particular sector that you're looking at. Then you can now add that to your, to having your, you can now have what we call also another relevant toolkit is also the BII toolkit, which is also available on the website. But these 4 things that I've shown you should give you a good indication of how to get started on the first learning component, which is, do you want to be an expert in environmental and social risk management? I will also do a part 2, which will talk about the sustainability bit. But for this first bit, when you've done this, right, I will also drop a course that you can need to do that summarizes it. There's an IFC course which says managing environmental and social risk. If you go through that course, once you finish it, I can now give a case study. And that case study is where you look at where your theory meets practice. 1 or 2 case studies of different sectors. And the simple task is identify the environmental and social risk for that scenario. Tell me the relevant IFC performance standard that is triggered. And then what is your justification for mentioning the IFC standard? So if you say, I'm reading through a case study in sugar industry, I read a case study, tell me the social risk and environmental risk, you outline them. What is performance standard that is triggered? Is it performance standard 1? Is it 2? Is it 3 or 4? Then next table is why did you pick that standard? If you have done this very, very well, then you have taken some baby steps to understanding theory and practice of managing environmental and social risk. I'll end this video here and do a part 2. Thank you.